Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight, Season 2. If you'll notice, we turn the lights off, put some red lighting in here. We also have Alex in the studio again, and Alex is here, his voice is there, along with the fan that's very loud. And then we also have a screen so we can have him pull stuff up and we can watch it for news and stuff. But I would love to introduce very new guest, Anna Brusilovsky. I met her as a Cyclone Aide first, and then I've also seen her wandering around. But all the conversations I have. I've seen you in the wild, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. But all the conversations I've had have been wonderful. But and I kind of want you to introduce what are the important things that guests should know about you. So if you were to introduce yourself to a stranger, how would you do it?
Excellent. Okay. I'm Anna. I'm from Minnesota originally. I study history and Russian here at ISU. I'm a sophomore now. I dabble in a lot of things. Jack of all trades, or of like 3 trades, and master of none of that.
What are the 3 trades?
Probably like I do gunpla when I have the time. I used to do Quizbowl and then I burnt out. And I've been really into One Piece lately.
Yeah, and that's a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
That is like 400,000 hours of content or whatever. No. Do you know the cumulative?
Well, I'm using one pace because I don't want to. I'm not going through it all.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Is
so
that a coin
they
phrase?
cut down like 40% of the show because it's all filler, right? And so I have been going through like 3 to 6 episodes a day for the last week. I've made it to not crazy far. I'm on Arlong Park. I've gotten that far before watching regular One Piece, but I've just fallen off.
Okay, wait. So they had cut it down. They've cut down 40% of the filler. So is there only 500 episodes now, or
they haven't released everything? I think if you counted it all, it would be like, probably around like 500-600.
That's insanity. That is a full-time job. I mean, that is
right.
That is something that you have to do. That is a willingful act to do. But
I think it's possessed me more than I'm doing it.
I've never met when someone says they are watching One Piece, like they're watching. It's not like a show that's like your favorite. You know what I mean? Because you're not done.
Right.
you have 400
get
episodes left. They are finishing it up soon, aren't they?
Eventually,
isn't it Lord to?
Yeah, so they're on, I think, I'm going to get flamed for not knowing this. They're on like Egghead arc now. And it's going to come up eventually. Like it'll finish it up. But they're on Egghead now.
The Egghead arc. I love how like...
Yeah, there's a guy who looks like Dr. Robotnik. His name's like Dr. Vegapunk. And he does, I am not this far into the show, but as far as I'm aware, he does like genetic experimentation and like atrocities or whatever.
What's funny is I haven't seen a second of One Piece. And so when people are talking to me, instead of using like a season episode description for how they're going, they just say the arc of like whatever one character is going through. But yeah, I wish I knew more about one. Honestly, I'm thankful because I feel like if I started, it would be like a full-time commitment.
It's very high effort
to make it
I've had to drop Gundam for it, man.
Oh, wow. And that's a lot for you. Because
no, it's been real painful because I was almost done with Double Zeta. You don't know what that means.
No, well, because I know Zeta's is Double Zeta like the
favorite.
second?
Zeta's like my top tier.
The second iteration? Is it Zeta 2?
So it's Double Zeta takes place directly after Zeta. It's like so most of the cast of Zeta gets like wiped out, like it's over for them. And
spoilers.
Spoilers for a show that came out in like 1985.
Yeah.
And then Double Zeta happens right away, and like this like kid, like some kid who works at like a junkyard on like a trash planet. Comes across, well, not a planet, it's a space colony, comes across the remnants of the AUG, or the Anti-Earth Union group, and he, via like a series of shenanigans, he pilots the Zeta Gundam.
I feel like this is also the plot to like a lot of, is this the OG junkyard, like, pilgrimage story of like someone living in a trash yard? I feel like this is Treasure Planet. I feel like this is Ready Player One. I feel like this is Star Wars. I feel like there are a lot of junkyards that like
It's true, it
spawn
comes up.
like the Iron Giant. I think this spawns like a bunch of like the junkyard is where things happen, I guess.
That's true, because you got to be. There's a sense of like innovation that comes with it, right? Like, out of the three first like UC Gundam pro tags, Judao is the one from Double Zeta, and he's an interesting guy. He's not my favorite. Camille's my guy.
I'll say I have your tier list of
You do
favorites
have the tier
in the
list.
book. So,
But I got to go take a visit at some point to see him. But Judao is like the most resourceful, let's say. Like Amuro, he's the first guy. He spends like I think in total like 15 episodes like moping, like not wanting to pilot the Gundam because he's like 15 and has severe PTSD.
what? And this is the start of the second show.
First show.
Oh, okay. I was like, are they like throwing out all these like character war stories from a show? You know, I could let you talk about Gundam forever.
You could.
But I feel like it's going to become you talking about Gundam while like all the Gundam fans in the audience are just listening with me. So,
I met a Gundam fan today. I won. I was in I think I've told you about this class I'm taking called Video Games and Politics.
No, you did not. Please tell me.
I needed a social science credit, and I saw like an experimental course listing called Video Games and Politics, and I signed up for it, and it's been wonderful thus far.
What is the syllabus look like for that?
I have to play Victoria 3 like once a week.
What?
Or either Victoria 3 or Crusader King 6, but Vicky was cheaper on Steam. So
that's insane. Is that like part of the course textbooks?
Like,
does Access Plus front the cost? Can you have the U bill pay for
They're looking
my
at it.
Steam
They're looking
account?
at starting a digital game library.
Yes. Yes. This is the Renaissance.
It's great because they're adding a video game design major at some point.
I've heard about that, and that needs to be here. But
right.
I just would love to imagine, like in the required course catalog, is video games and politics, so you can understand like the evils you are unleashing on the world when you create a video game. I'd love to see that. But it did shock me when you told me that like Gundam is within the top like 25 most popular franchises of all time, because I have never heard of it. Alex, have you ever heard of Gundam?
There
you
you
actually
go.
did. Wow.
Yeah. That's true.
Oh, not to compare these, but Alex does really like Power Rangers, and I know it involves big robots, old cartoons. And,
there is an intersection between like Super Sentai and Tokusatsu and like mecha fandom. I'm less into Toku stuff. Like I've dabbled in Kamen Rider. But it hasn't quite gripped me.
Thank you, Alex, for like applying some validation to the names, because I am like, I appreciate.
Okay, that's hype.
I'll say because I appreciate the knowledge that you have, and that's the biggest thing, because I wanted to get onto that. One of the things that I had most appreciated when talking to you is just the want to have and express knowledge, which not everybody has. Not a lot of people have. It's kind of almost like an archive mentality that I've seen with history majors specifically, where it's like, I want to know things. I want to know the names of things. I want to be the one person that carries on the legacy of another, whether they're alive or dead. You know what I mean? Like, I want to know these names of who created these things, who allowed me to feel this way. And I've really appreciated that sense in you. And then when I heard that you had been on Quiz Bowl, or is it Knowledge Quiz Bowl?
Quiz Bowl.
Quiz Bowl. We do Knowledge Bowl, and I think that's a different thing.
Yeah, Knowledge Bowl has like reach into Minnesota, but my school never did it.
Okay,
because they thought the format sucked.
Yeah, dang, all my Knowledge Bowl haters. But then I heard you had Quiz Bowl, and then it was like, okay, now it all makes sense. Like this had been, and I kind of wanted to touch. How do you feel hearing that? Does that feel like that kind of matches how you view your ideas on history and knowing these things and getting into the things that you like? Do you have that sense of discovery? And
yeah, absolutely. All of my interests have been like centered around like obsessive cataloging. Like since I was a little kid, that's always how I've done things. Like I'm constantly getting clowned on for this, but I used to like memorize lists for fun.
That's
like as a kid.
insane. That's what I'm talking about.
Because it was like it was very superficial that I just wanted to be able to like spew everything back. But like the reason I'm into history is because I want to be able to learn as much about a thing as possible and like store it and then inform about it, if that makes sense. Like archive is the word I would use because I want to go into archiving, so it makes sense.
It all comes together, and I think that's it's such an interesting aspect to have in a person, because you'd wonder, like, if everybody died except for 100 people, somebody would have to take on the responsibility of keeping the history alive, of writing this stuff down, of cataloging what we're doing.
Right.
But the chances of having 100 people and having someone who is wanting to do that and sees the importance of doing that is very low. You know what I mean? And so that's why with the presence of the internet, with the presence of just history in general, it's so cool to just know that that's something that you're interested in. And so especially with the quiz bowl and stuff. So
right.
With that, I wanted to let's talk about quiz bowl. I want to talk about history, being a history major in a bit, but
right.
with the quiz bowl thing, you just kind of like dropped a ball on me that like you had gotten second place or like first place or something very impressive, being like first or second chair on a quiz bowl team of something ridiculous in a giant school in a giant state.
I wasn't that good.
But walk me through your quiz bowl experience in high school and what you did for that.
Sure. Okay. So I'll go back to middle school. In middle school, my middle school did not have a quiz bowl team. We had a science bowl team, and I tried out and I didn't make it on.
Ow.
And so then I did speech and debate for a year, which was like my lasting legacy. If you Google my name, you get a picture. But in my freshman year, like the quiz bowl team had advertised throughout the school, and I showed up, and I knew people from there because it was like my school was very big, but I knew a lot of the people in quiz bowl because we had a lot of the same classes, because quiz bowl attracts like a type of person.
Yeah.
And so I started out just doing history because that was the thing that I knew the most about, and I was like I was like mid to good, not good, but like mid to slightly above mid for a freshman, and then mid to slightly above mid for a sophomore, and so on and so forth. And then by the time I was a senior, like everyone older than me had graduated, so I sort of like found my way to a spot on the A team, and then I was my like A team's number 2 scorer. I was nowhere close to number 1, but A team consisted of 4 people. Like we're pretty consistent. It was one guy who's a good friend of mine who did a lot of stuff. Like he was a generalist. That's what we would call someone who did everything, but he did primarily science and then like fine arts and then literature here and there. And then I would do history, and then I dabbled in literature and fine arts. And then we had like a geography guy who did a little bit of everything, and then like a mythology and astronomy guy who did a little bit of everything.
Kind of the heavy lifting.
Right. So we covered a lot of bases.
Wow. And so on the A team, and then how big was your school?
My quiz bowl team was not very big. We had maybe my senior year, like probably 25 to 30 people. My freshman year, probably like 40, 45. The school itself is like 3K-ish.
Yeah. Well, because that's what I was saying. In any school, what percentage of people are in quiz bowl? And it's probably not a lot. So 40 is probably actually a pretty big quiz bowl team. So
well, we were nowhere close to the biggest in the state. The biggest in the state was Wyzetta, who are from, okay, so here's Minneapolis, and to like the, what do you call it? Like the west that's where Wyzetta sits. They're on Lake Wyzetta. That's why they're called Wyzetta.
Oh, okay.
And they had a much better team because they were just better than us, and they had a lot more teams. So they got up to like, I think the highest I've seen them have is, I think, J team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're rocking like
right.
70, 60 members. Maybe my math is hilariously incorrect on that.
Yeah,
but,
I don't know. Because each team is 4 people. Sometimes you'd have teams of 5 and they just like sub some like people out at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
But
tag them in. And so what was your, my biggest question was what does like the study and preparation for Quiz Bowl look like? Like, are you reading up on things, or is this things that you commit to memory and you're constantly expanding that? So like, how does that work if you were to prepare for like a Quiz Bowl tournament?
Right. So in Quiz Bowl, there are like two ways to get good. There's real knowledge, real knowledge, which consists of like actually learning a thing and like studying up on it. So real knowledge is most common with like science players who take like a lot of like AP classes or do like research well in high school. It's common for literature players who just read really voraciously. It's common a lot, especially with classical music players who like happen to have perfect pitch or listen to a lot of classical music. Like this was one of my teammates. He was just a guy who like knew a lot. And then you had like, it's been so long, I don't even remember what we used to call it, but like knowledge that you acquire not from really getting into something, but from just rote memorization or like seeing it enough times that you pick up on it. So Anki used to be a thing that people used a lot to study, like flashcards. My history was primarily real knowledge, or real knowledge. And then everything else that I did, classical music or literature or whatever, there were pockets of real knowledge, like books that I had read and really cared about, and then stuff that I just had to commit to memory and know about in order to get good at the game.
Well, I guess I've only ever seen that in League of Legends chat lobbies. I've never heard it in real life. But see, even that though, like, how do you know what to read up on? Like, is this just like I'm lacking, knowledge of this particular area of the world, or like, well, how do you know what to read up on? Did they give you material?
They don't give you material, but there is like a Quiz Bowl canon, so to speak. Like there is, that's what it's called. It's called the canon. And so there are like different difficulty levels, right? Like college Quiz Bowl is much harder than high school Quiz Bowl, which is much harder than middle school Quiz Bowl. And then within high school, there's A sets, which are like very easy, and then regs, which is like a regular level, and then nationals, which is nationals. And different things will appear in the canon, but generally speaking, you learn either by like looking through questions or playing a lot, or like going through frequency lists and figuring out which names come up the most. So you could pull up like a literature frequency list and see like, okay, Shakespeare comes up a lot. I should probably know at like the bare minimum the names of most notable Shakespeare plays and like at least a couple characters and a couple plot points from each, and then maybe like some biographical details. Whereas maybe someone like I'm trying to think of someone who's notable but not less notable than Shakespeare. There's a lot to choose from. Let's say who's the guy who wrote Remains of the Day? Ishiguro. Ishiguro is a guy who will come up at the high school level, but probably not at an A set, and probably not for much more than Remains of the Day. So you only really have to know that one book well. So you figure it out by playing, basically. You figure it out by playing and by reading.
And is this something that other people have cataloged and put online, or is this something that you have to like card count and like understand the questions and have experienced them? Or is there like a kind of a playbook that exists of thousands of questions?
A little bit of both. So there are like question archives. Like you can go on and find a packet at basically any difficulty whenever. And then there are like websites you can go onto, like Proto Bowl, where they just like read questions to you, and then you like type buzz and then you answer and so on. And then my school had like I remember we had like a literature study list that got passed down like year after year to whoever wanted to study from it. So I think it went back to like 2014. It's a pretty old list. And I studied it a little bit, like I added to it as much as I could. And then otherwise, like there's institutional knowledge, right? Like schools like can come out of nowhere, like having no team and be good for a few years. But as soon as that one player graduates, right, they're gone. If you want to build a dynasty, you have to accumulate institutional knowledge. And so the way my school did it was we would, like the captains or people who cared a lot would make like presentations and present them over the summer, or send out resources, or just try to make like the underclassmen learn stuff if that makes sense. So I have a bunch of old presentations lying around in like my Google Docs from when we did like a Quiz Bowl summer camp where for like an hour, like for a week, once a month, if that makes sense, we would bring in all the whoever wanted to, and like the captains or the people who knew a lot would like PowerPoint at them.
Well, and that's so crazy because my Knowledge Bowl like team experience has been like you just show up on the day and do it and then go home. There's no preparation, there's no studying, there's no heavy lifting that needs to be done after school. There's absolutely no like archive of questions that you're like reading in the lines to see like how many times this gets brought up, so what's the likelihood of having to know. Like that stuff that's such an expert level of Quiz Bowl that I've just never experienced before. So it's crazy to hear about. It's crazy to hear about it. How would you feel if we pulled up a Quiz Bowl, like a couple of Quiz Bowl questions, just to like look at them and understand?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Alex, do you want to pull up?
If you look up like HS Quiz Bowl packet archive, you could find a bunch of packets on like various difficulties. And I can talk through some of it. Like I haven't played competitively since my senior year at nationals. Like I've dabbled in like open tournaments, like let basically anyone in, and I've done a couple of open tournaments with like friends, just for fun, like meme tournaments basically. Yeah. A lot of them are like your team writes a packet and then other people play it, and then you play other teams' packets and so on and so forth. And those I find really fun. They're called like packet sub-tournaments.
Yeah, because you can kind of curate your questions to be something.
Right. Like I have, I think, a couple of my old ones saved somewhere. Okay. And they're not great, but they're there.
All right, Alex, what do you got?
Pull it up.
I'm going to have to pull on my bivocals for this one. Oh, this is Anna's thing.
Sweet, all right. Nothing very hard.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
What difficulty does it say? All right, let's have a gander. Oh, History B. That's different. So, History B is interesting because it's run separately from a lot of Quiz Bowl. It's run by a guy named Dave Madden out of New Jersey.
You just know the lore.
Like all of the big names are super known because it's such a tight knit community.
Uh-huh.
Like the main Quiz Bowl organization's called NAQT, and the guy who used to run it lived like 30 miles from my house, so I'd see him like running tournaments all the time. He's an ISU alum, actually.
Oh, wow.
That's a guy named R. Robert Hensel. I think he's retired now, but he used to run like the Minnesota High School Quiz Bowl League. I'd see him around. If you go to nationals, you see various people. Like if you are known in the community, like you tend to meet people. So I am not known in the community. I'm known as like a shit poster to some extent. I used to do a lot of like being annoying on the like HSQB Discord server when I was like 14.
That was my question.
Yeah.
I was like, and how could you even get known as that? Okay, I was wondering if there was a Discord server or some internet presence.
There are so many. So the main
involved.
Quiz Bowl Discord's like 3,000 people.
No. Okay.
Which isn't very big as far as Discord servers go. But if you're a big name, then like you are known. And then there are a bunch of, each big name has at least a couple of good stories associated with them. Like I have a few I can tell, but I don't know how much trouble I'll get in for them. Like I have a friend who once sent a not great email to the guy who, like, the vice president of operations for NAQT.
For what?
So they kept like spamming him, and this guy was like, if you email me again, I'm gonna literally eat you.
That's what the vice chair, like
one of my friends, when we were still in high school, he went to school like out east. And because I knew people from all over the country, right? And he emailed the vice president of NAQT, and he got in huge trouble for it. Like, he was sanctioned.
I know. I was wondering. I thought that was like the vice president responding to some random kid, like, "I will eat you."
No,
like,
there are stories about that guy too, but I don't. I feel like I'd get in trouble for saying this. Like it is known knowledge that he. I don't think I can say it. Like, it's not bad per se. It's like a cringe thing he did like 20 years ago or something.
It's like one of the internet archives. Alex, what are you still looking? What do you got? I can't hear you, by the way. Okay.
Okay, all right. I've played later editions of Prison Bowl. I haven't played 2018. Prison Bowl is like a regs level set, so it is or like regs plus. Like it is between like regular difficulty and national level difficulty. So we can take a look at Prison Bowl is pretty fun.
I kind of I want to pick apart and I want you to walk through like how you do or don't know something.
All right, okay.
Like,
so Prison Bowl,
you,
I should
Alex.
explain the history of the set. Prison Bowl is written by the Hunter College High School in New York. It's like an elite high school in New York City. You have to like test in to get in. They only let in like top, I don't know, like 1% or something of students in New York City. So they are crazy good. They've won Nats a bunch of times. And they write this set every year.
It's as if you are reading off like a Wikipedia page. That's awesome. Anyway, Alex, pull.
All right.
I saw the packet, and you'll have to forgive me for my squinty eyes.
All right. Okay. So the answer to this one's Aaron Copland.
Sorry, read it out loud real quick.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I don't know that much about classical music, so I would not pull this until Fanfare for the Common Man. So the stuff that's like in bold, that means it's in power. So if you buzz in while they're still reading that part, you get 15 points as opposed to 10. And then if you buzz incorrectly at any point prior to the completion of the question, you lose 5 points. If you buzz in at the very end, like after they say spring, and you're wrong, you don't lose any points. But
you still get a guess.
Yeah, you get to buzz in. Like at the very end, if no one's gotten it, like it is within your best interest to buzz and see if you can pull it out of somewhere.
That's crazy. First off, and so tell me how like what part of your memory or knowledge allowed you to get that answer? Was that something that like you had looked at the common questions or people that were asked for, and then you just had associated the name of that piece with that person? Or
kind of. I don't know how to explain it much more than like that's the sort of thing Copeland would do. Like Copeland would write Appalachian Spring. Like that is the thing Copeland does.
So you just know about Copeland specifically?
Not really. Like I know very little about Copeland other than like you can kind of guess things based on like the things that you do know about a composer. So like if you know that Copeland is like a big Americana guy, and you know that like okay, like a classical composer who writes about like Americana or the American West, and then you see that there is a ballet called Rodeo. If you know that Copeland is a guy who does that, even if you don't know that Copeland wrote Rodeo, you can kind of figure it out just based on vibes,
like typecasting.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, we'll do like one more. I don't want you to be my monkey here.
All right.
I do wanna...
If it's science, I'm gonna like not pull it whatsoever. Yeah, there we go. No, I'm not pulling that. No, I saw the answer. It's Planck's constant, but I would not have gotten that because I just didn't do any science.
Okay. So you know where your boundaries lie.
Yeah, we had a science guy on my team specifically so that I would not have to do any of that. Okay. I was also not the religious guy. I'm trying to think. Four Kingdoms. This is very embarrassing. I'm so washed.
Don't be. I like give up after reading like 5 words.
Okay. 7 or 9 times. No, I've heard this before. I'm blanking. This is a thing that'll happen where you'll like know something in the back of your head, and it just won't come to the forefront.
Oh my gosh, I imagine.
So let's see. Just based on difficulty. And what isn't in there. I can rule out Sikhism. I can rule out Hinduism. Not Zoroastrianism because the founder is not Mahavira. No, I got nothing. Let's see.
Just give one guess, if you could.
Buddhism. I don't know. No, that's wrong. It's Jainism. Okay, all right. See, that makes sense. Like the thing that I associate with Jainism is like the root vegetable thing.
Okay.
Like they don't do root vegetables. That's like a stock clue. That's just like a.
If you read that, you
you instantly know, and like you have to buzz when you hear that because it's supposed to light up like a specific thing in your head.
Yeah.
So a stock clue is a clue that's used in questions all the time, and once you hear it, you're supposed to automatically go like buzz. Yeah, I know what this is. All right, I should know more about Jainism. That's embarrassing.
Okay. Alex, let's look at one more.
One more.
Just because the thrill is amazing.
Okay, so Faust.
Wow. Okay. Wait, hold on. Yeah. That's. I mean, yeah. No, I think that's good. But is there anything you want to say about your process on that? Was that just like?
Well, because we're scrolling through and you see everything at once, I just looked at like towards the end. The only thing you really need for Faust is like Mephistopheles, and then like either Mon or Marlowe or Goethe. Like all of those are like very
Like
easy
stock.
Faust clues. Yeah. I'm trying to think, just looking through where I would have suspected it. Okay, I would have suspected around Valdez and Cornelius, but I would not have buzzed at that point. I probably would have, if I'm being smart about it, like if I'm not just buzzing carelessly, I would have waited until either Poodle or Mephistopheles.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to just test you on the spot there, but that was incredible. Like I've said, I mean, there's a word, there's like an association game that's being played here, but also just like a general understanding of personalities that you have to memorize. I mean, even when we just busted out prison set, like you just knew, okay, here's the person that did this, here's where it's at, here's where it's located. Like, I mean, just the associations that have to go on in here. And so that kind of goes to my next topic in this realm. How has this like served you, or how has this influenced like your normal life or your mindset on people or life in general? So like walk me through how you've used this or how this affects you.
It's a really good party trick, I'll
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
I think it's made me better at like my reflexes have been improved substantially by the ability to like buzz very quickly when necessary.
Yeah.
That's sort of superficial. I think the biggest thing it's done for me is like, I don't know, like it's deepened my knowledge base, certainly. Like I know more now than I did when I was 14. And then it's the big part of what kept me in Quiz Bowl wasn't really like the accumulation of knowledge, and that was big for me because it's something I enjoy, and it's given me a lot of skills that I do use. But the big thing for me was like the community and the people that I know, like outside of like friends from high school and friends from here, my closest like knit friend group is people from all over the country that I had met through Quiz Bowl. Like I met my girlfriend through Quiz Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. And then wasn't your girlfriend like crazy good at Quiz Bowl?
She is, but she's washed now because it's been years. I'm more washed than her. I think. No, she wouldn't want me to go too far into detail on it because she's like, what if the Saudis find out that I was really good at Quiz Bowl like 5 years ago?
Something. They're coming to get her.
Well, because she's got like various schemes to travel to foreign countries.
What? For the sake of her safety, we won't have to.
Right?
We
Yeah.
won't have to go to
No, we won't talk too much about whatever stand she's visiting next.
Yeah. But because you had said that some of your old, teammates or old people had been on like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or Jeopardy or some of those game shows and stuff too. And so,
yeah,
I mean, you're walking with almost objectively prestigious crowd if they've been on like a game show and done well.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Because
it's very fun when all of your friends are like way smarter than you.
There's that classic saying, like, if you're the smartest man in the room, like find another room. You know what I mean? Because you want to have people to look up to
right.
and people to teach you something. Right. So I mean, there is something to be said about
right.
But you're always gonna be the smartest person in a room. I guess when it comes to like Quiz Bowl and knowledge bowl stuff. And I was wondering if there are any mindsets on like developing your brain or learning things or historical. Are there any mindsets that you've garnered from working on stuff like this? Is there anything about learning or pushing yourself or applying the things you've learned or the pursuit of knowledge that you've learned from doing this, or has it mostly just been like kind of fun?
There's both to it. I think it's taught me the importance of like real knowledge as opposed to rote memorization. Like all of the stuff that I've just like committed to memory for the sake of like points, I've forgotten most of it now because it's been so long since I've played. But the stuff that I like really dug into and that I cared very deeply about, like it's in there. Like it's entrenched in the noggin.
It's stuck.
Right? Like it's that's sort of how I feel about like interests I had as a kid. Like if it's like a very superficial interest, I can't really recall any of it. Like I was a Percy Jackson fan when I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10, but I can't really recall any of the plot points. Whereas like I was really deeply invested in the Norman conquest.
I don't even know what that is. I don't think.
A guy named William the Conqueror invades England in 1066 and becomes the king. I cared so hard about this as a kid that I would there's like a lot of cringe stuff that I did. Like for a project once, I sculpted his son out of clay. like a bust.
That's kind of sick.
Of William Rufus. Yeah. Like I was deep. I was deep in it. And like it's remained there because it's actual real knowledge, right? It's something that you had to like sit down and care about for an extended period of time. And even like I don't like spend all of my time thinking about William the Conqueror now, but I could go back to it in my head and recall what I know and less more I know and more like what how do I put this? Like what knowledge I can like draw out of it and apply other places. So like William the Conqueror is interesting to me because there's like a history of Norman, and then if you go back further, like Viking invasions, right, in various places, like throughout all of Europe and like parts of the Middle East, right, and that's interesting because you can connect one event that happened to a million other events that happened in the same time period and different time periods and with different people and so on and so forth. And that's what like the map of history is, right? It's not one event and then it's disconnected from a different event. It's a web, like everything intertwines, and that's cool to me.
And that's super cool. And someone was talking to me about the Bible specifically and how I had heard this, and no fact checking. I had this in a dream once. That's my source. Is that it was written over hundreds of years,
right?
And a lot of the stories can be associated with things that were happening at that time, even if they were unrelated, even if those things didn't happen. But like you can see the historical context in all of the stories in the Bible based on the things that are happening around there. And I don't know any specific examples.
No, you're right. There's I will maybe be wrong about this, but like the flood, like Noah's flood coincides with like the Bronze Age collapse. Like the Sea Peoples or whoever is dabbling in this area at this time, because like the Hebrews or the Israelites or what have you were centered in a really important spot at a really important time, and so there's like a confluence of things occurring, and so like I don't take the Bible to be like word for word everything is exactly as it happened, but I think there's truth to it in that like timelines match up and like historical figures that actually exist like do come up. Like you can prove that like the Second Temple period was a real period of time. Like you can go and find like archaeological evidence of like the Maccabean revolt. Like that's there. Like the theology behind it is what's debated, but like the actual history of it is what I find to be cool.
I know, and I had a wonderful conversation with one of the a person among one of the religious communities on campus about the Bible, and I had told him, I was like, my general opinion on it is that even if those things didn't happen, there's things to be garnered because it's a historical piece, but it's also something that you're supposed to take bits and pieces of it and internalize it with yourself.
Right.
And so what that allows, though, is for none of it to have actually happened, is what that allows. Not that that's the truth, but the point of it is to read it, understand its context as what it's trying to tell you. And then when you had that historical element to it, it kind of just sinks in like it matters less and less if these things actually happened, if you're actually understanding what the book is about and what created it.
Right.
And,
No, I agree completely.
Yeah, and so I think it's cool to talk to somebody who like understands the history or cares about the history, especially with the Bible in context. But I kind of wanted to bring with the quiz bowl and then the history into one general thought. A lot of people are going to hear you talk about this stuff, and they're going to hear you talk about quiz bowl, and they're going to hear you talk about history, and they just cannot grasp the sense of why it matters, of why you would do that, like why that would interest you, and why it matters. They just don't care. And so if you were to defend the point of why do you care about history? Like why are you a history major? Why is history important? Why is knowing these things important? Do you have kind of a response to that?
I guess for me it comes down to like it is like it's an innate desire for me to go and want to accumulate as much knowledge as possible and to catalog it and to archive it and then to send it out into the world. Like this is the thing that I've wanted to do with my life since like time immemorial, right? But like if I had to defend it, I'd say that like human knowledge is precious. Like there is like value in understanding the things that have happened in the past and how they shape where we are right now, and there's value in preserving that. Like the thing that causes me the most grief in the present day is probably like the loss of history that's going on with like in terms of internet archiving. So I'm a big internet user, one could say.
Chronically online.
One could say. And so it like any sort of like threat to the internet archive like freaks me out, because I think it is like the greatest. It is our Library of Babylon. It is no, that's not what that's called. Library of Alexandria, Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Yes, yeah.
I'm getting all muddled.
Yeah.
It is our Library of Alexandria, and it like any loss to it, like any damage, any threat would be catastrophic. And I don't know how to like justify that beyond saying that like there is an inherent value to knowledge, and there is an inherent value to the preservation of knowledge and the preservation of like historical record.
Yeah, very, very well said. And I had a conversation with my grandma about it, and very boomer take on most things involving this. But they had said like there's the library that would hold that stuff, and then they had said what happens when the internet like gets buried, and we have it's this very weird thing where I feel like because of the internet, people care less about history, but also because of the internet, they can care more about history,
right?
And they can add more. So you're kind of widening the gap of people who really care and people who don't care at all, and making it bigger. And so I wonder, when we were talking about that survival situation when a lot of people get wiped out, and then you have like that one random history person who's willing to archive it. It's like, how many people are we going to have that's actually doing this work of archiving it, and who's going to do that? And so that's why I wanted to get into what has that passion towards being an archivist been like. What are you doing right now to work in an archive? And then how has the history major at like Iowa State been like? Is it working towards being in an archive like you are wanting it to, or like how is that training you to do what you'd like to do?
I mean, it's going well so far. All of my history classes thus far, because I'm only a sophomore, have just been like actual history classes, less like historianship. Like that's a class I'll do next semester. But just these are the things that have occurred. Please learn them. You know what I mean? Which is the basis of historianship. So I'm glad that that's like a thing I've got to do.
Yeah.
But I was gonna actually apply for a job at the university archives, and then I saw how much they were paying, and then I saw how much the alumni call center was paying, and then I made a different choice.
You made a financial decision. You got to make money. You got to make that bag somehow. Got to make the bag somehow. Well, I haven't talked to a ton of. I have one history major who has been on here twice now, and we've talked about it. And the way that he talks about some of the stuff he's doing, he wrote like a paper about just like this one couple who were Iowa State alumni during the Great Depression, selling like corn or something and teaching people. And it's like the perspective that he has, because he went so deep into history, and just these two people, nothing else. these people weren't even important. Like
They're just people.
They're just
Right.
people. You know what I mean? And so he's like reading these letters that they sent to each other and like going into the history of them and like looking at the books that they checked out and like looking at all this information of things and trying to get this this biography of this random couple. It's such an interesting thing, and I hope that you get an opportunity to do that as well, to like really dive in to the people who you're interested in doing, because some of the stuff that they've cataloged in the past is like, if they catalog some of the stuff that I'm doing right now and then 200 years later people are watching it, like I don't know how interesting it's going to be, but someone's responsible for doing that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like I've journaled every day for the past 3 years.
Nice.
And I just wonder, where is that gonna go? Like when I die, is someone going to be like reading my stuff?
Well, either someone will do it or they won't, really.
I know, yeah.
So when I write things, I don't write with the intention that like after my death, someone is going to read them. But I do kind of hope that someone will.
I know.
Like when I was a kid, like my deepest fear was that like whatever it is that I do with my life would like be lost, like be totally gone. And so I got like really obsessive about certain aspects of like internet history. I cared a lot about Usenet. If anyone knows what that is.
Usenet. Is that like the first YouTube? What is Usenet?
Usenet is like it's before the internet, so we're going way back. Usenet was like a peer-to-peer like online, well, not online. It was via computer, and it was a form of like peer-to-peer communication. And you'd have like news boards where you'd all like go on and talk about whatever, and you'd have different news boards for whichever thing you're talking about. So it started technically in the like 70s, early 80s, but it didn't take off until the mid 80s, and then it really, really hit in September 1st of 1993. I could be wrong. It could be 2, but you can pinpoint it to like that exact date, and that marks the day that AOL, great company AOL, began offering Usenet access to all like internet service like subscribers, and so you'd get like an influx of new users who didn't know like how the culture of the boards worked and how to post and how to do this and how to do that. And so like there was a certain part of the internet that was lost to that, and this like freaked me out. When I was a kid, I wanted like to archive as much as humanly possible about it, because like they had gone through September rushes before, because each year like you'd get people who'd like go to college and there'd be a computer lab and they'd log onto a computer for the very first time, and they'd like cringe post for a month, and then there wouldn't be that many of them, so they'd still be like absorbed into the culture of the board, and they'd figure out how to post. And this after the big rush when AOL started letting people on, that culture was just gone, because there had been so many people that had joined like after that there was no way to assimilate them into it. And like this, I don't know why, but it like completely and totally terrified me when I was a kid.
That's such a deep fear to have. How old? What is a kid for you? Like, how old is that?
I'm trying to think. I first started caring about Usenet. I time out. Like I measure, I guess time in like which interests I did when, so I could like trace it back far enough.
Give me a rough estimate on age.
Let's see, probably like maybe like 12.
Okay, that's a little better. I was expecting like I don't know what I would do if my future like 8-year-old kid comes up to me and be like, "Dad, what if history forgets me and my bloodline and everything that I live for means nothing?" I'd be like, that's the question we're all asking, I guess, is like how to make history remember you. Damn, I was gonna say, I could not imagine having like, that's like an existential crisis that you have when you're like 50 years old, is you're like worried about like this
your
culture.
Legacy, right?
Yeah, you're worried about your legacy. Like that's when you see your 14-year-old kid like do a cringe TikTok dance.
Yeah.
That's when you start to question your legacy. Not when you're 12 years old looking at some random database that happened well before you were even alive, trying to preserve this fresh innocence of the internet. I also love that because I would love to see what internet in the 90s looked
You can.
like.
There are archives, man. You can take a look whenever.
Alex, can you pull up some of this stuff? I would love to see like when people are first trying to communicate with each other, because I can think of what communication of like boomers looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean? With like overuse of periods and punctuation with like abbreviations that like wait, you know what I mean? Like I can see that. But I would love to see what like people our age were doing in like the 90s.
Yeah, no, you could. I think like Google something or other has like has it preserved. I like don't remember as much about that as I used to, but there are like certain like events that I care a lot about because I think they're funny. Like spam originated on Usenet. Like it like literally like spam like as it is called and how it functioned originated on Usenet. Like people would spam it, and that's like where that word came out of.
What's the origin behind calling it spam?
Like the Monty Python skit where they sing the spam song and you just like and then the really funny part, like my favorite like Usenet event is probably the Meow Wars, and this ties into Quizbowl actually.
These are more arcs. This is the Meow arc. And it was, what is the Meow War?
So I don't remember the specific details. We could actually pull up the Quizbowl wiki and probably find an article about it. So Usenet had so before Quizbowl there was like a TV show, like a game show called College Bowl, and that was where Quizbowl rose out of. And there was like a College Board news group for people who participated in it on Usenet, and there was one guy who got into like a flame war with I think someone on the Beavis and Butthead forums. I could be wrong, and someone started like spamming him with meow jokes, and it took over Usenet. Like Usenet was virtually unusable between like 1996 and 1997 because they'd just keep like spamming meow on like everything, and there'd be no way to escape it because because it worked like a bulletin board.
Yeah.
And every post would be drowned out by walls and walls and walls of meow.
How long did you say this lasted?
Like 2 years.
2 years?
Like straight up this would be like if you couldn't use the internet whatsoever because
you had to like climb through this wall of
meows. Yeah. I think there we are. The meow. Okay. So the Harvard guy was let's see. Different guy. Zoom out and scroll up a bit. The Harvard guy was the Quizbowl guy. He was a guy who was like being a prick. He was like, I am so smart, and the Beavis and Butthead fans are not as smart as me. Is this Encyclopedia Dramatica?
What?
Oh my God. Okay, Matt Bruce. Matt Bruce is a Quizbowl guy. If you go on the Quizbowl wiki, you could find like actual information about him. This is what he posted. He was like, these young ruffians on the Beavis and Butthead forum. They're not as smart as me. I who play Quizbowl for Harvard. And then he's like, it started.
He got memed so hard.
Yeah, and I freaked out when I found out that like this was also a Quizbowl guy, because I had known prior that this was like an event that happened on Usenet, and then I found out that Matt Bruce got like removed from Quizbowl communities like 20 years later for being cringe.
That's like the first ever like getting dunked on in the comment section.
It was the first ever flame war. The word flame war comes from Usenet. And the Meow Wars was the first big, like the website was, not website, what do you call it? I don't even know how what to refer to it as, because it is infrastructure that existed before the internet we have today. ARPANET, I'm trolling. Thank you. But so it was like straight up unusable. Like if you can imagine not being able to Google anything for 2 years.
Because one person said something cringy, and then the entire universe decided to. And I'm trying to think of like parallels right now.
There isn't.
Well, because I know that
It's
that'll
nuts.
happen to people,
Right.
You know, like a specific person.
Yeah.
But to shut down the internet to meme on this one person, I do feel like I kind of need to understand the scope of this. Like, do we have numbers on how many people were accessing this? Like,
Active on Usenet, not a ton. If I had to guess globally, like in the six figures.
okay,
But maybe they hit 1 million at some point. I don't know, but like the Beavis and Butthead forum was not huge.
Yeah.
the College Bowl forum was not huge. But
were these separated in forums as during Usenet, or was it really
like
all
boards.
just one bulletin?
like different like news boards. I call them forums because I'm wrong, and that's not what they're called. But it's like a habit.
Yeah, I get it. You're
right.
You're a 4chan gremlin. I get
Right. So it's habit out of
fear.
right. And so they're like different news boards, and they each have like their own. But like they're each about a different thing. So I think one of my favorite ones was there's like an actor with a really huge nose. His name is Carl Malden, and so there was a news group dedicated to his nose called alt.Carl Malden Nose or something.
Dang, these are the first subreddits ever made.
Basically, like a Reddit is structurally pretty similar to you. Well, not pretty similar, but in the sense that like there's the big website and then there are like subreddits.
Well, yeah. I've never used that website in my life.
Never in your life.
I don't even know what that is. But like you're providing such a fresh perspective on just the internet and how it was created. I'd love to imagine that my own father used this and
It's
is
possible.
aware of the Meow Wars.
I've asked my dad about it because he, let's see, I think he would have been in the right age group to use Usenet. And I asked him about it, but like the only thing he was doing on the internet at that point was like using LimeWire to download like the music illegally.
Yeah, well, because I know my dad grew up in the Iowa area when he was a
Right.
teenager, and I don't know the exact history, but I know that Iowa State was in development of maybe the first computer.
Yeah.
But like it was among the very first. Yeah, thank you. You fumbled, bro.
It's so over.
Great. Well, because I know my dad would be like wandering around Ames and he would just like stop to use the computer lab. You know what I mean? So he
Right.
was like computer savvy around the creation of like when it was garbage to use a computer.
Right. So your dad's not quite that old.
He's not that old, but
Right.
he was here when it was very uncommon to be using. It would have been in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like when this stuff was coming out.
Right.
He had to go to the computer lab and use like the
It's
computer.
totally
Yeah.
possible then
Yeah.
that your dad is like Usenet aware.
I would love to ask him about that. That after this, thank you for giving me homework that I need because we'll continue. I'd love talking about the creation of the internet because like I know that people get flamed like really hard on
Right.
TikTok. Like and TikTok is now this new like
It's a place.
yeah,
Certainly.
this new it is, but it's this new inside joke among strangers is now
Right.
what it is. Like I know there's this one guy who's popping up on everyone's For You page and they respond to his TikToks just saying cut a board every time he says something.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like that's all his comment section is. And so now he can't use the internet.
Right.
Because everyone's just going to respond with cut a board. But I'd love to just like imagine that when I do the search bar it's just
That's all you get. Right.
it's insanity. Where I'm very thankful for where the internet is now, even though Reddit exists. And
Well,
even
you do
though-
what you can.
Yeah, we save the ones that can be saved. And iFunny and as a Russian studies, you're probably very aware of iFunny's presence.
So familiar with iPhone.
I used to be on iFunny, and then it was.
I think everyone, like at a certain well, at what age were you on iFunny?
I'm embarrassed. It was for a while.
Because there are like a
Part of the
couple of
ship, part of the
acceptable
crew.
answers, and they stop being acceptable like once you hit double digits.
Well, what can I say? What can I say? I stopped using iPhone probably 2 years ago. But to be fair, I didn't get a smartphone or the internet until I was like 15.
Right.
So like,
that's fair.
I started doing iPhone when I was like, I think maybe 16.
Right.
And that
okay.
was my first introduction to meme culture, and then I stopped when I was like 19.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's like a normal, right.
I'll take it. I'll take the flame for that.
See, this is interesting because my internet exposure was like far too early and probably not in a great way.
Has influenced like a lot of who you are now.
Oh, probably, yeah. Like I was, like I would lurk on like 4chan starting at like age, I don't know, 9, 10.
That is insanity. I mean, actually, I've seen like, never mind. But that is insanity. That's so wildly.
Right.
I had to go to my friend's house to watch like funny, dank SpongeBob episodes. You know what I mean? Of like,
yeah,
of funny, hyper edited SpongeBob gangster paradise parodies and whatnot,
beautiful,
and stuff like that. So,
but see, I think different people, even in like the same environment, will adapt to it in a different way. Like I didn't have a phone at that point. It would be like on the school computer lab, right? Whereas my sister has had like iPad access, like since she was like, I don't know, 4. She's 14 now, and she has turned out like exceptionally normal. I think. The most she does is like she plays a lot of Roblox. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But she is like so extremely normal about the internet, and I'm like shocked and befuddled because when I was 14, I owned multiple Sonichu medallions. You know what I mean?
You're wearing the shirts to.
Halloween 2019. Oh yeah.
That's bizarre. I wonder what that comes from. Those iPad kids. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm watching my niece, who at the time was like 7,
right?
Like speed run getting to a video just using the recommended. So it was like a Wikipedia, like the Wikipedia game where you get from one page to another,
right?
But just with YouTube recommended.
That's nuts.
And I'm not even, like, quicker than I could almost search something up. She was like, channel, and then she's like, look at this. I was like, what did you just do?
It's the algorithm, man. It's like ingrained in them.
And she's watching like Poppy's Playtime or some like dumb like YouTube thing, and I'm like, this is insane. And I was listening to a podcast, Cody Co and Noel Miller, if you're familiar. I figured you would be. They had said something that was remarkably hilarious, and a lot of these older people are talking about boomers or talking about kids, and they're being like, these kids have no work ethic. All they do is sit and eat hot chip and
eat hot chip and lie, right?
Yeah. And so they said, all these kids do is play on their games, and they don't know what hard work is. But the people who are playing Minecraft, all they're doing is grinding. That's it.
Yeah.
Like they've been working. They don't play a game. They work on another game. And they said that he came up to his 8-year-old nephew and he was like, he's playing Roblox, and he's like, do you like that game? And he's like, no. And he's like, oh, well, then why are you playing? He's like, well, I really I want this nice skin for my.
So you have to grind it out for the Robux.
So they're like they're working to make money just to get the exact same like things that we would be getting in real life.
Right.
And such a funny
my sister actually has a scheme for this. She so she has like no skills.
Wait, what's your sister's name?
Her name is Misha.
Shout out to Misha. No skills.
Okay, she's got skills, but the whole premise of this is that she has a skill, but not like on Roblox, like in order to like have like whatever you need to be able to like code, right? She can't code. She has a friend who knows how to like design like skins or whatever, and my sister really knows how to market that sort of thing. So she has like a Roblox scheme where she has like a storefront set up. She has her friends like skin designs, and my sister sells them for like a set amount of Robux, and she makes bank. Like she gets all the Robux she wants, and all she has to do is like send people like kind messages with like pink heart emojis.
How old is your sister now?
She's 14. She's been on this scheme for like 2 years, maybe 1 year.
Wow, this is like entrepreneurship,
man.
At its youngest. Yeah, this is like the kind of conversation that I need to be having with like a 40-year-old. You know what I mean? Just because I saw this thing and it was like this girl on a TED Talk. It was a very famous clip of her saying, people in our generation don't know how to use a rotary phone or sign a check. Yeah. And then someone's response was, I can just Google it. If you gave me 5 seconds to find out how to do that stuff, or I would die, I would do it. But if I put 40 of you in a room and let you out when you purchased a skin on CS:GO, you would die in that room.
Yeah, that's exactly what would happen.
It was like the funniest perspective of like how wild the internet is right now. And it has altered so much about how people live,
Yeah.
how people are, even in the last like 7 years.
Oh, without a doubt. I think the internet of 7 years ago is not the place it is today. I mean, like, some things are the same, and I tend to be like nostalgic for the old internet as, you know, like using it or whatever, right? But because I have been I guess I stopped lurking on forums when I was like 15 and started posting, and now I'm back to lurking because I'm trying to wean myself off. But I am very much nostalgic for like this is the worst thing I've ever said. 4chan's anime board of like 2015.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I've had worse things said on this podcast, but that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, no, it's awful. Like, it is objectively a horrible cringe place. But there is like a certain I left a little bit of my heart on like an Attack on Titan thread in like 2016.
Yeah, of like a shipping like of a show.
Well, see, I was never really into the shipping aspect of any anime. Like,
wow, you dodged a bullet.
Yeah,
especially if you're watching One Piece. One Piece isn't as bad.
Well, I'm
My Hero Academia or something.
Well, right. See, the thing with a lot of fandoms is that there'll be like the fandoms are kind of split in half between like power scaling types and shipping types. And One Piece is like, I deliberately try to follow people like on Twitter of both sides, so I get as everything like shoved in there, right? And so I get people who are like, Gear 5 Luffy could take 1 billion Gokus in a second, and then I get people who are like, what if Zoro and Sanji made out? Which, I don't know, compelling question. What if they did?
What if the power scaling? I didn't know that those were two sides of a coin. I know exactly what you're talking about based on, like, you know, when I'm mindlessly watching Minecraft parkour
on TikTok,
and then I just happen to notice that there's something playing above it, and it's a power scaling, like Saitama versus Goku versus, you know, all these classic things, and I do. Because we got about, like, I don't know, we're running over an hour, and I wanted to talk about this because you put it on your questionnaire. I wanted to talk about the hot take that you wrote on your questionnaire.
Oh, which one was this?
And if you don't remember it, it was something along the lines of people can choose an identity to not be an oppressor, and this is bad for social society.
This is a take I agree with.
I know, and I wanted to understand. I think I needed more context to this.
Right, okay.
Because I have thoughts on what you're talking about, but I think I need more context and examples.
I tried to put down a take that, like, is genuinely hot and that I do genuinely believe, but that won't get me in too much trouble.
Yep.
So I as a person online who like has been in all sorts of spheres, from I've seen like the wokest of the woke and the opposite of woke is, like, you know,
conservative.
Yeah, like I like to observe from everywhere as much as I can, right? And so I think the views that I hold like tend to lean on the woke side. Like, I've been active in a lot of places, but I've never been like, oh yeah, those Stormfront guys, huh? Like, you know, and so I've tend to find that there is like a specific phenomenon that you get among, like, the group tends to be like middle class or upper middle class or like rich white girls who tend to have like this guilt. They tend to feel this guilt for belonging to an oppressor class, basically. And you don't really find this guilt in like young white boys of this like same like economic status, because I think they cope with it differently. But you get a lot of like young women who are how do you put this? Like, they feel bad because they see that like institutionalized racism is a thing, and they see that like homophobia is a thing, and so on and so forth. And they don't want to be bad people. Like, they don't want to hurt anyone, which is a noble cause. But then the issue comes when they're like, well, okay, I'm not a bad person. I'm not an oppressor. surely there must be something about me that makes me not a bad person or not an oppressor. And I don't think these girls like go on to fake identities, so to speak, but a lot of them will like, will posture about it excessively. Like if you've been on TikTok and you find like the 10 signs you have ADHD and it's like your tummy hurts. Like, you know what I mean? That sort of thing, where it's people are looking for reasons to put themselves like in a like an oppressed group that you can identify into, as opposed to like a group that you're born into. And then it like helps to absolve them of this guilt that they're feeling internally, if that makes sense. And I think this is bad because it is distracting from like the issues that like these people are like purporting to care about. Because it's like, I don't know, having ADHD will not solve like racism.
yeah, it doesn't absolve you from. You can be racist and have ADHD,
right?
And so just to like not misquote you, just so I understand what you're talking about. Are you saying that people who are generally not a part of an oppressed group are identifying with the things that they can to become a part of an oppressed group to prevent themselves from being oppressors?
Basically,
is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think like people are. I want to be charitable. Like I don't believe that there are like people en masse going out and faking things, but I think that people very much want to be good, which is, I think, a good impulse. I think everyone should strive to be a good person. But there is a, I don't know, a phenomenon even in people who like, how to like, I don't think that like, have you heard of like the Jakey phenomenon?
I've heard of Jakey, but I haven't. I don't know it in this context.
Okay, so the way I've seen it is like there is a how do you put this? There's like a certain subset of bisexual women who only ever really enter relationships with guys who are kind of dicks. And then they will go and like posture constantly about, how much they love women and how gay they are and so on and so forth. And this is annoying to me as a gay person, because I don't know, if you don't like your men so much and you love women so much, I think you should consider dating them. And B, being bisexual does not like absolve you of whatever if you're dating like a guy who's an asshole.
Yeah, it seems like it could be unrelated to the gender and just stop dating shitty people.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is unrelated to gender in the sense that, there are people who are pricks everywhere, but like there's a very specific phenomenon where people like bi women who date guys who are dicks will then go out and talk up constantly like how much they like women and how much they need a girlfriend and how like their bisexuality is like 99% women and the 1% of men is their asshole boyfriend. Uh-huh. It's like I don't want to like police what people do. People can do what they want. You can't help who you're attracted to. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you gotta either like how do you put this? Either like stop posturing or not associate with people who are not very good.
Yeah, and I understand completely what you're saying, and I think socially I've 100% seen what you're saying. I also think the internet makes things very loud when it's not that loud.
Yeah, but like IRL, this is not that big of a deal. But online,
Yeah. But even in person, I've seen stuff like this, and I wonder though if this stems from more so like a hierarchy of oppression mentality than it does the idea that people are faking it. It feels like this stems from the powers that we give to people based on their oppression levels.
I agree.
And so if we didn't have groups who were seeking power based on their oppression, I feel like you wouldn't have people who are masking like, oh well, I get this power level because I'm autistic, or you know, I'm depressed, or something, or even something even higher like, oh I'm a part of the LGBTQ community, so I
Right.
get this level of power, or because of my race, I get this level of power.
Right. Like I think that most people who are identifying themselves as a member of a group are not faking it. I think like there are exceptions. Like, do you remember the TikTok Tourette's thing?
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I'd like to believe that not all of those people were like doing that sort of thing on purpose. I think that's probably just like you see it enough times that you start to emulate it in your real life. But like that's probably really damaging for them. I hope they're all okay. But
yeah, we had a couple but that's middle. Everyone in middle school is gonna fake something to get attention. So,
but I mean, I do think there's like a genuine, like these people genuinely are a thing or genuinely believe that they are a thing, and then will I don't know, like slot themselves into like hierarchies of oppression so that they aren't like the big bad on top. Because even if like they're number 2 or number 3 or number 4, they're not the big bad on top. Like if you're not like most people aren't like oil tycoons who like go out and club seals or whatever, right? And, like those guys are probably the big bads on top. But there are people who want to like exercise the certain privilege they have from being like in the upper tiers, but they don't want to be complicit in like evils that are occurring in the world. And so they lower themselves, but not like to the fullest extent. Like it's like a superficial, right? It's a superficial lowering of their level because, you know, at any given moment, right? A lot of them could bounce back up. Like if things ever start getting like really, really bad, for I don't know, like if there is now like a proposed like I don't know, like a institutionalized oppression against people with ADHD. The people who have ADHD because their tummy hurts can suddenly say that their tummy no longer hurts. And then they are no longer like this is not a thing that will happen.
Yeah,
like hypothetically, right?
I understand.
Right. They can go out and say that they are no longer a part of this group. They can bounce back up, and then they get to exercise that level of privilege.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful point. And what sucks is it's difficult for me to talk about this because I'm just like a straight white dude, like
right?
Middle aged. Like I have issues with my body, but none of them are like worth complaining about, really. And they're not on a peer. No one's talking about bad eyesight people. You know, no one's talking about that.
Right.
But when you have those things, I think it's hard for me to talk about it. But my general philosophy on it is that I find difficulty in even creating a triangle of power,
right?
Because not only does that give people power, especially at the top of those things, maybe if they haven't earned that power,
right?
Like, there's nothing similar about me and Donald Trump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's like he owns so much money that I will never ever have access to.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing similar, but by equating me in that group, you're giving me a ton of power that I don't actually have.
Right.
And then vice versa, you're taking away power to people who should not be taking away power, especially on the bottom of that pyramid.
Right.
And so I think what my thing would be, though, is that there shouldn't really be a hierarchy of power. And if there is, we shouldn't be talking about it in this kind of context. I don't think that is healthy for society. If we were to lump people into like, okay, here's the most oppressed group. You're the most oppressed group because you're black. That's just how it is. Like, again, with who I am, it's hard for me to talk about. But like, taking away that power because of how they're born seems super racist. But beyond that, I just don't see the point in it. In the long term, if you're wanting to help as many people as you can.
Right. I think you got to address like institutional issues, but by creating hierarchies of oppression, you make it so that it's more difficult to dismantle the actual like what do you call it? The institutions and the circumstances that have created the world we're in now, right? Like. No, yeah.
Well, and I like that because the problems are with the problems with people or the good things with people are with their character. And I feel like if we have all this talk that are demeaning people to whichever platform they rest on, that does nothing but take away like who they are. And so it's like if the problems are institutional, that's something that needs to be addressed. But if that institutional problem isn't affecting you, you shouldn't be talking about it like it is. You know, so you have a lot of people who grew up in a nice home and really like we'll use like racism or for example, like racism really hasn't touched them in any meaningful way because I don't know, they grew up in Iowa in a middle class home where there's nothing really going on like that. But then they come here and they're like, because I'm a part of this group, I'm oppressed in this way. But they haven't experienced that despite how they are. And there are lots of people who maybe haven't experienced a privilege or haven't experienced any pressure on them because of the identity that they hold. And it's weird to be sharing that with, even though you haven't experienced it. And that's another big problem I see with just having this hierarchy. It's like you can have experienced the things that you've experienced, and we can point to things that as a whole are injustices or are privileging a certain group of people, but you shouldn't bring that to yourself if you're not affected by it.
Right. Because I like there are some forms of injustice that I think permeate through society, and there's no like getting out of it. Like there's still 40 acres and a mule that are owed to every descendant of slaves in this country, and I don't think the government's ever going to do that. That kind of sucks because that is a thing that they said that they would do, and that's like an injustice that's. Like there are after effects because it's difficult to build up generational wealth, right? But that's a real thing. It's like a tangible thing that you can point to with effects. But then you also get like the I am neurodivergent and a minor types who are you know what I mean? Like that people who feel that they cannot be held accountable for certain actions because they hold certain identities. They are neurodivergent and they are minors. And so therefore, you cannot be mean to them on Twitter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the neurodivergent thing with anything in the mind with like, specifically with like anxiety, ADHD, depression, neurodivergence. I think neurodivergence has more of a thing that you can actually look at and understand.
Right. I'll say that
brain scans and whatnot. But
I'll say that everything I've said before, I'm not like I don't want to. I have ADHD. I'm not trying to like speak out of my ass or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's like the community has shifted since since I was a kid because I'm like relatively late diag. I was like, I don't know, 12, somewhere there, right? But the way that it's been talked about in the last, I don't know, 5 years has really, really shifted. And I find that to be interesting.
Yeah, well, and what I was expecting, because I'm a psych major and you go and you learn about all these like brain things, and what I was expecting versus what they've actually been talking about was very different. And I've noticed that the professors who are teaching an actual class, like not one of your required like career paths classes or like some of those random classes that are more about professional stuff. The way they talk about depression and anxiety is very different from the way that the society talks about it, and very different from the way that those professional building classes are talking about it.
Right. I'm interested in hearing more about this. Elaborate.
In general, how I grew up and how I kind of feel now is that you're kind of as strong as the limits you put on yourself. And so with a lot of people I had seen or worried that with depression, anxiety, despite those things being true, they were used as crutches to allow to work not as hard. They were used as your biggest limitation. Like, you are as good as your biggest limitation. Here's my limitation. I now don't have to do this. Or I now have a crutch to lean on when I'm having difficulties with something. And so then when I came here, I was expecting to hear the opposite. I was expecting to hear like, here's what it is. And what I've heard is both, which was very shocking to me, was that no, there are people who literally do not produce enough dopamine. Their brains are actually broken. They cannot hold on to the dopamine as much. Therefore, they feel this way. This is what depression is. But they also said there are also a lot of people who are just like sad and they have issues that they need to work on.
I think both can be true.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. And I was shocked that I was expecting them to just be like, everyone who says they have depression has a brain disposition to feel that way. I was not expecting them to be like, no, some people actually don't have that. It's mostly just like an issue that they have to work on with themselves. Which I was shocked to hear. And I think that that's a conversation that people are scared to have because it inevitably leads to your sadness is your fault, and that's an uncomfortable thing to hold on to.
Right. It sucks to hear about that sort of thing.
Yeah. With any and with ADHD too, it's like your hyperactivity is your fault, and that's just how it is.
Right.
And that's a hard thing for anybody to hear, but it's just as real of an issue as saying your brain literally just doesn't work.
Right.
And it's just as real of an issue. It's just as hard to fix.
Yeah.
And it's worth working on. And I think that people don't get to hear that enough. And I'm scared with some of the psychology people that I've met that they don't tell people that they don't say like, hey, this sucks, but it's something that you can actually fix.
Right. I think you do have to tell people that, or else they get sort of sunk down in a mindset, right? Like when I was in middle school, I think I also had like an anxiety diagnosis or something, and I was on something or other for it, and it helped somewhat, but like what was going on with me wasn't like an innate thing. Like I'm not a very anxious person now. It's that like the circumstances that I was in had made me an anxious person, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I'm I guess mildly worrisome now, but not to the extent where I'm freaking out over everything, which was where I was at that point in my life. And what I needed to do was A, to change my circumstances, and B, to like work on myself to become a more like functional person. And that's not possible for everyone, but you do. There's like a combination of things that have to happen. I think there's the medical aspect, obviously. Sometimes you just like, I don't know. Sometimes you just kind of need like Ritalin or something if you've got really bad ADHD. But then there's also like the way that you think about things and the way you go about things, and then the environment that you put yourself in, or the environment that you're like. When you're a kid, you can't really do much about where you're being put, but when you get the freedom to move around, that's where you're able to like adjust things to your needs.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to put the ball in someone else. It's put the ball in their own court to be like, this is something that you got to do. And one of the perspectives that I've had that my dad taught me that I use all the time is with any adversity and with anything, there are only two things you can do. You can either change your action or change your perspective. That's it.
Right.
Those are the only two options. So it's like when you get a diagnosis of something, you still have those two options. It's not like there still are things you can do. You know what I mean? Like you can change your perspective on it, or you can change an action that you're doing.
Right. But you're not stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't know if you've got like really severe like schizophrenia or something. There's very little that you can do. Yeah. But that's sort of like a different thing.
That's a different beast. Yeah.
Right.
I think bipolarism, schizophrenia, if we're getting into specifics,
like
but again,
BPD,
I would say we don't need to put we don't need to make a hierarchy of
right.
of mental illnesses.
There are some things that are harder to deal with, and then there are others where you find out that you've got something, or that there's something up with you, and then you've got to work through it in some way or other, because the goal should be to better your life, however that might look like.
A perspective of hope should always be said in any diagnosis, in any psychological conversation. I think there should always be a perspective of hope, and a perspective of control, because without it, I mean,
like I don't think like I will ever get to the point of like a person without ADHD in terms of like ability to focus, but I think I can get to the point where I am like I think I have gotten to the point where I am like functional in society, which is more than I was at like in high school. Like in high school, I would, I think I've mentioned this to you before. I graduated high school with like a 2.3 GPA.
Yeah, you told me you kind of dropped off to do some shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think if it wasn't for Quizville, actually, I probably would have dropped out. And I guess my parents would have killed me. So that's also a motivating factor. But this was for a lot of reasons. But it was because I couldn't really focus on anything other than like whatever hyper niche interest I had going on at the time, and I was like. I had like weird family stuff going on that I didn't know how to cope with. And I was just generally kind of an unhappy person. And it made it so that I prioritized like other things above classwork, and then also above family and above like everything. And it didn't work out. And so the switch that I needed was going to college and like getting out of the house basically. Like putting myself somewhere else so that I could sit down and like grind on it, and it worked. I no longer have a 2.3
That's
GPA.
awesome. That was my next question, is to see how you're doing with that.
Right.
But
No, I am like my friends were shocked because my GPA has like nearly doubled like from senior year of high school to freshman year of college. And like they thought that this would never happen, because the joke in my friend group was that like in terms of like ability to study, I was like, it was like borderline impossible for me. But like I don't know. I figured it out, and the thing that needed to happen was a change in my behavior, like sitting down, like putting my nose to the grindstone, but then also. Like circumstance, I think circumstance is discounted somewhat in how like people look at like whatever mental health thing is going on in their lives, and for me the big thing was that like I was kind of being screwed by weird family stuff, and I needed to like get myself out of that for a bit so I could like be functional.
Yeah, and I think your success story is a perfect way to end this first episode.
All right.
And so, well, is there any plugging you want to do? Anything you want to talk about? Any final messages that you would want to leave to the audience to make them the most successful and best people that they can be?
Watch One Piece live action. It comes out on the 31st.
Everybody be in the Ames Theater, Cinemark.
Netflix, man, I am so hyped for this.
I saw the.
I need this to be successful. It's like
it's a part of you, but
Yeah.
other than that, it was awesome having you
Right,
on it,
yeah.
and thank you for being here.